Eyes are so fun to draw, and there are so many interesting variations to them. You get a variety of different looks just by changing up the basic shapes. You can make the eye shape quite sharp and angular, or they can be very round and smooth. You can make the eyes quite narrow and small in size, or large and round. You can slant the eyes downward at the corners, or you can make them slant upwards for a cat-like look. You can also change the distance between the eyes, making them quite close to each other or rather far apart. That's up to you. Just as a note though, I like to do just under the length of another eye in between. When I start, regardless of where I'll end up, I usually start with the most basic of shapes. So I begin with a soft oval. For me, it helps me to think about a fat jelly bean almost. After that, I add 2 triangles to the sides. I really like the look of a cat eye, so most of my characters have this. Then I fill that in with my pencil and I add a little indication of the upper eyelid. Now I go in and I add that rounded iris shape, letting the top of the round circle get covered by the upper lid. Next I add the brow shape, and then I shade with my blending stump so it gives the bowl of the eye some form. Again with my stump, I draw in a triangular eyeshadow shape. Then I add some brow hairs with my pencil and refine the shape of the lower lash line with my kneaded eraser. I outline the iris for some added definition, add some quick wispy lashes, and then I draw the pupil and add some highlights. Here you can see that process broken down into steps if you'd like to follow along. Now let me show you all this in action. So first I wind up, and when I'm getting the hang of the round motion, I press down lightly on my paper and get those bean-like shapes going. I usually like to slant the eyes I draw slightly upwards, so you can see that I'm doing that here. Once I have those most basic of shapes, I'm going in and I'm getting more specific. So with a little hard pressure, I start adding a more defined line for the top lash line. You can decide if you want to go quite angular, or soft and round, or something in between. Now I'm making that triangular shape because I love a cat eye. I think it makes for a really pretty eye. So now I'm just defining that tear duct a little and adding a little indication of a top lid. You can add as much or as little of the top lid as you want. You don't even have to add it because some eyes won't even have it. So that's completely up to you and the look you're going for. Now I'm drawing the brows. The brows are extremely expressive, and we'll get more into that later. So for now, I'm making sure not to draw really dark, because brows I personally kind of push as I figure out the mood of the piece. They really determine the expression. You can even start brows simply by drawing with a stump. If you have a used stump, you can simply put down an arch and then add quick brow hairs. Brows, like everything else, can be pushed around into endless variations. Experiment with thickness, length, spacing, and arch. Now getting back into this, I'm just blending out the upper lids and brows. I personally like the smoothness and simplicity in characters, so I do lots of blending to achieve that. Now I'm using my darker 4B Statler to add those dark values. I color in the triangular cat-like eyeliner, so these eyes will start to pop with contrast. Contrast is what's going to grab attention in a piece. And in this character portrait, I want the focus to be her eyes. Now back with my 3/8 draft line, I'm winding up again to draw the circular irises. Once I'm ready, I lightly press down and sketch it in with a tone. This will make your drawing look more expressive and free when you draw like this, instead of being slow and forced. I like to get sketchy at a time like this because I know my stumps can always come behind and save the day. Now that I've blended things out, I need to go back in and define. That's kind of how I like to work. I sketch, smooth out, and define. I like to bounce around between these 3 techniques. I find that this helps me create a piece with a variety of textures and more visual interest. Now with some quick, short strokes, I'm drawing on those bottom lashes. If you think about it too much or go too slow, it may start to look unnatural. So practice trying to confidently draw lashes. You'll notice the lashes near the outer corners of the eyes are a bit darker compared to the very light lashes closer to the inner corners. Now I'm drawing on those top lashes, almost with a flicking motion, applying more pressure on my pencil near the root of the eyelash and lighter pressure as I get to the tip of the eyelash. You'll also notice how some of them clump together to form little triangular shapes. Now since I spent some time defining, I'm going in and smoothing with my stumps. 3H pencil is also great for subtly applying value. Now I'm adding in the pupils. I think drawing the pupils is actually optional for character drawing. I find sometimes it works, and sometimes they can just make the character look strange or like they're being hypnotized. So occasionally I'll leave the dark pupils out. But in this case, I'm going to draw them in. I blend them out and I add cast shadows with the stump to keep her from having that hypnotized look. Now it's time for my favorite part, the highlights. With a quick couple dabs, see how that just brightens up her eye? Now with my kneaded eraser, I'm gently dabbing the side opposite the eye highlight I just placed. This will complete the look of light hitting the eye. Using my 3H now, I'm just adding a little eye detail. Eyes have tons of fun and interesting details, and you can Google around to find more ideas on little details you can put in the eyes by looking at references. Now I'm just tweaking, darkening areas that I think need to have a darker value, blending areas that I think need smoothing out, and lightening areas that are just too dark. To finish up, I'm just going to add that final layer of detail. So I round out the irises, the pupils, add details to the lids, and to the brows as well. Using quick strokes, I draw in the brow hairs, similar to the quick way I drew the lashes. Now let's walk through drawing eyes in a 3/4 view. Again, by changing up the angle, size, slant, and distance, you can achieve endless combinations. I find it helpful to think about the eye closer to us as more angular in shape, and the eye further away as a bit more rounded. I don't know why, but thinking this way helps me draw 3/4 eyes more easily. Here you can see the basic steps of drawing eyes. If you'd like to print this out and reference it, I've included that in the class worksheets. To start, again I'm using my 3H pencil. This is a light pencil that can easily erase if you want to. This is a good quality to have in a preliminary sketching pencil. So as I mentioned, I'm trying to think about the further eye as a bit more rounded in shape and the closer eye as a bit more angular. But again, experiment with just how angular you want to go in general, and also consider the variations of size, slant, and distance between the eyes. Now that I have the basic shapes I like, I'm going in and I'm darkening up that upper line. And I'm adding in that triangle cat-like eyeliner. You don't have to add these triangles. I just do because it makes some of my favorite character eyes. Now I'm darkening up that triangular shape with my dark 4B lead and a harder pressure to get the dark value. Now back with my 3H, I'm following the angles of the eyes to add a small lid. Now before I get too far ahead on these eyes, I'm going to add some brow shapes in here, just so we can get the emotion of these eyes going. You can see the brow goes off at an angle from the tear duct, if you're wondering where to place it. And for this eye here on the left, I'm kind of going with the direction of the eye here to place that brow angle. Experiment with different brow types though to see what kinds of looks you can get. Brows can be really fun to play around with, and they can drastically change the look of your character. Now I'm lightly indicating the roundness of those irises. And now I'm just coloring it in since I have the basic shape. Now I'm defining the bottom lash lines with my 3H pencil. And now with a large blending stump, I'm just following the lines and smoothing out everything I just drew. So since I smoked it out, now I'm going back into detail mode, defining the bottom lash line a bit more. If you'd like to take a closer look at the intricacies of an eye, check out my class, Start Drawing Techniques for Pencil Portraits. For character drawing, however, a little tear duct and simple waterline indication will do. Using quick strokes with my 3H, I'm adding in some brow hairs, trying to draw them in the direction the hair grows. And now I'm just blending it out, so we can't see every little hair, but just some hints of some. Now with my 4B lead, I'm making quick dark strokes for lashes, with a little curve to them. These ones here will sometimes flow this direction. As always, my stump allows me to smooth out all of this. Now on the bottom, I add a couple tinier lashes. Again, sometimes these will clump together at the tips, making little V shapes. Now I'm adding a more crisp outline to the irises. And I'm adding a cast shadow right across the top here. This will give the eyes depth, like the lids are really folding over the top of those eyeballs. Now I'm pushing the contrast and detail in this eye even more, darkening up the irises and the lash line. Now I'm lightly indicating circular pupils. And I just blend it into the iris a little with a stump. Dabbing my kneaded eraser on the iris gives the illusion of light coming in. Then on the opposite side, I place a dot highlight, and it just makes the eyes pop. Just for fun, I add little line highlights. Eye highlights can be a variety of different shapes, and you can have fun experimenting with those shapes. Now these are my finished 3/4 eyes. Please feel free to use my sketches here as references if you need help. I would recommend you start drawing a few pairs of eyes now. Start a couple eyes in front view and a couple in 3/4 view. By the end, it's really cool to see how all your different characters will turn out. Keep the order of operations pretty much the same, but just switch up the shapes as you go. Once you have some eyes drawn, let's learn about noses.